Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Sharlee Dixon. My guest today is Amber Hollingsworth. Amber is a master addiction counselor who built a global movement by breaking the traditional rules of recovery. As the founder of Hope for Families Method and the voice behind the massive Put the Shovel Down YouTube community, she specializes in teaching families how to outsmart addiction without relying on ultimatums or hitting bottom. Today, she's helping thousands of people worldwide protect their own well-being while effectively influencing their loved ones to seek help. I'm excited to have Amber with me today, where we'll explore how families can dismantle the barriers of addiction by trading tough love and outdated stigmas for a rule-breaking strategy centered on connection, invisible intervention, and practical tools to outsmart denial. So, Amber, it's so great to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me here, Sharlee. I'm excited about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Amber, you've shared that you've been dealing with addiction your entire life, first growing up in an addicted family, and then later becoming a master addiction counselor. What was it about that dual perspective that brought you into this work? And then when did you realize that the traditional playbook, so to speak, for addiction treatment just wasn't enough?
Well, even though I came from an addicted family, that's not really why I got in the field. I kind of accidentally got in the field. But I do think that coming from an addicted family gives me a really great perspective. Now, the family I grew up in, I had addicted parents, sister, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousin, like it was rampant. But when you grow up in it, you don't even know that that's abnormal. So it wasn't even like I grew up in it and I knew that there was addiction and then I got in the field. It was more like I grew up in it and then I got in the field and then I knew how bad the addiction was. I mean, it was like pretty hardcore, as in like my mom was doing meth with my sister hardcore. So, but as crazy as it's not like I didn't know that they used substances. I did. Like, I don't have any memory of my Mimi whatsoever without a glass of vodka in her hand. But I wouldn't have put the label addiction on it because it was just my normal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said all that, I still feel like I had a pretty good upbringing. Now, my family, they didn't have a lot of resources or money, so that was hard for us. But as far as having, like my Mimi I mentioned, she was fabulous. She was wonderful. My mom was a great mom, but they still had those problems. And I feel like that helps me to be able to see that someone can be for real an addict, but also be a person at the same time. And that one thing doesn't necessarily override all of their other qualities. So I do think that background helps me tremendously in the field. Plus, I think if you look at, a lot of psychology people, they say you're just attracted to what you grew up in. I guess that's how I landed here and I stayed here because it just feels normal to me.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you on multiple things. So when we grow up in something, we just kind of see it as normal and not necessarily as this horrible thing. It just is, what it is and what we're used to. And you bring a great point, because a lot of times what we hear about, especially what we see on TV, is the addicts are people that are addicted to substances or people that are just so horrible and they don't take care of their family and they're just horrible people. But that just is not necessarily always the case. And so they're humans, they're people just like everyone else, and they have crutches just like everyone else,
Right.
And those crutches are addictions to substances, and of course though is not a positive thing, but they are still just regular people.
Right. If you would have asked me as a kid, I would have just said, I just thought I had the cool parents. Everyone came to our house because I had the cool parents. That's the way I thought about it at the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and speaking of it like that, and I mentioned stigma for a reason, because in the context of public health, stigma is, we use that word to say, okay, well, an addict is this type of person and they're going to do these horrible things. And we have to use tough love and they're going to get to the bottom and we have to wait for them to get there. And we have to use this tough love and not support them and wait for them to get to this horrible place before we can offer them support and help. Why do you believe that these traditional approaches often create more barriers to, to access or to recovery?
Well, if you just look at the definition of addiction, the most basic definition is continues to do something despite the consequences. So the idea that we have that if a person has enough consequences, they're going to stop sort of goes against our thinking about what the word even means. Now, I do think that things have to get uncomfortable for someone that has an addiction, like the scale has to tip, the pros and the cons.
Right.
And that can create sort of little, what I call moments of clarity, where people start to think, you know what, I'm going to do something different. I need to stop this or whatever. You know, have these little moments where they see things clear. But it doesn't necessarily make someone stop. I do think there's like an optimal amount of consequences. But when you get too far in, I think it's really a lot harder to bring someone back from. Like someone's already lost their children. If someone's been to prison and now they can't even get another job. If someone's already living on the streets, that can become their new normal. And they actually get comfortable with it and they don't have anything left to lose. So I feel like at a certain point of consequences, it's almost sort of counterproductive. It's not impossible, but really difficult to bring people back from that amount of consequences. So waiting for that bottom thing, I'm just not a fan of. I think it's not necessary and it can be really harmful. And the way that it can be the most harmful is because the family members who have these addicted loved ones, they get the impression that they need to force and expedite this whole bottom thing. Mm-hmm. So they start like pushing them out and like cutting them off financially, emotionally, putting them on the street because they think that this person's going to wake up, you know, suddenly have this wake up call and that they're going to stop. Well, that's not really the case. I can pretty much guarantee that if you throw someone out of your house as an addict, it's going to get worse, not better. Now, that's not me saying you shouldn't throw them out. There's plenty of reasons why you might should, but thinking that it's going to make them stop is not the one. That's not the reason to do it.
Got you. And honestly, when you speak of that, it makes me think of the show Intervention.
Yes.
It was out. I can't remember right now what station that it came on, but that was kind of the premise of that show is, you know, we will bring everybody, all of your loved ones in the room. For those that haven't seen it, we'll bring all your loved ones in the room and we will have this big intervention and this kind of like a lot of drama and everybody's telling you why you need to stop using or why you have to do these things. And sometimes it would work, but sometimes it wouldn't. Many times it didn't. And sometimes the people went and they would, you know, give you a little blurb at the end to tell you whether they stayed or not in treatment. And a lot of times the people didn't stay. And so you talk about in your approach, the invisible intervention. Can you explain that to us and how it's different and how kind of guiding someone towards recovery or access to recovery is different in an invisible intervention versus going the other way and making it be this big event?
Right. So like on the show Intervention, which we've almost all of us have seen that, it shows the most severe cases. Most of those people were already at bottom, had been scraping along the bottom for years.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily opposed to that type of intervention, which is, I call it an old school intervention. It's really called a Johnson model intervention for that kind of case. But if you have a loved one who's still somewhat functioning, as in they're still going to work or going to school, or they're in denial, that kind of intervention isn't going to work in the long term. Like you can have one, and sometimes you can leverage someone into going to treatment because you had one. But if someone's in denial and they don't really think it's a problem, they're going to keep using when they come out. So for me, if you're dealing with a super severe situation and maybe they get like legally mandated to treatment for like a long time, I'm cool with that. Because sometimes they're so far gone that you have to get them clean for them to decide to get clean. And I'm like for it, all for it. But when you got a person who doesn't think they have a problem, and then you have that kind of intervention, number one, it traumatizes them. And sometimes they just don't even get over it because I know it seems crazy, but they, you know, having dealt with people who have addictions, they feel like, oh my gosh, like everyone in my life was talking secretly behind me and confronting me like that can be quite traumatizing, and they can have a hard time getting over it. And some of them will go to treatment and some of them won't. So I think it's like you got to look at where your loved one's at in this continuum and decide if we're like at bottom and this person's going to like kill themselves imminently because of their drug use, do whatever you got to do. But if you're dealing with someone in denial, you got to do something different. And that's what the invisible intervention is all about. It's how do I do a few things? How do I get a person out of denial? And how do I find that person's core internal motivators and harvest them out to make them want to change? So that when they decide to change, it sticks. And a lot of times with these people that are somewhat functional, they're able to do it without ever even having to go to treatment. But even if they do have to go, like maybe to detox or something like that, they're ready for it in a lot of ways. Like they're motivated to change. They have their own reasons. And so it tends to just stick a lot better.
Okay. Nice. And so how would you have conversations or lead families towards doing an invisible intervention with a family member or, coworker or whatever relationship? How would you lead someone there?
The first thing you got to do is what you don't do. It's what you got to stop doing. This is more important than what you do. And what you got to stop doing when you have a loved one in this situation is you have to stop being what I call the bad guy. Like you have to stop playing the villain role. Because what happens when you're dealing with someone who's in denial and you're watching them, make these horrible decisions, ruin their life, your life too, probably, and anybody else that's living in the house. And so naturally you have the instinct, you just want to grab them up by the shoulders and say, what the heck? You got a problem. You got to stop doing this. You need help. That's our inclination. It would be mine. It would be anyone's. But it doesn't help because when you come at someone directly like that, it automatically, whether they know you're right or not, puts them in a defensive position. And so when you come at someone like that, they are naturally going to come back at you with why they're not that bad, why you're crazy and you think everyone's alcoholic because your brother was an alcoholic. They'll rationalize it. They'll minimize it. They'll gaslight you. They'll make it your fault. They'll throw all these defensive statements back at you. And not only is that hard for you as the family member to deal with, it's so frustrating, but every time you get that person to think that thought and say those statements, they're reinforcing that denial in their head. So it's actually making the denial worse. And then the person gets just preoccupied with thinking, yeah, they have a problem, and that problem is this family member. And the reason I know this is because I've been dealing with people who have addictions for 20 plus years, and it's all they can talk to me about. Like when they have that person, that if you can get them to come to therapy, it's the only thing they'll fixate on. And so until that family member, there's usually like a primary family member. Usually there's more than one, but there's like a main one. It's usually the spouse or the parent or something. And they're just fixated on that, and they cannot see their own problem because they're so wrapped up in what this other person is doing wrong. So step number one is you got to stop being the villain because they feel like you are their problem, not the addiction is their problem. And they're not going to be able to see it until you're not playing that role. And it's hard not to because you get sucked into it. It's a natural inclination and you're doing it from a good place. It's just not helpful. So that's the first step and the biggest step. And if you don't do anything else, you have already made your chances like way better if you just stop doing that.
Yeah. And that's, the first step is already a huge step. Like that's a big one to eliminate that need to be, the scapegoat, the one that is the bad person, the creator of all the problems, the source of all the issues. So absolutely
right.
Agree
because
there.
The addicted person is just preoccupied with the fact that you're controlling, you're critical, you're mean, you're negative, nothing they ever do is good enough for you. This is all this person is thinking about. They're preoccupied with the fact that you're all those things and they are resentful and all this stuff about that. So if we can just remove that, because that's really just a distraction from what the real problem is. So it's like the family member has to stop distracting the person from what's really going on over here.
Right. Yeah. And so speaking of denial, I was looking through your YouTube, the Put the Shovels Down, kind of trying to just research and figure out, how, what you speak about, all of those things, just kind of in research, preparing for us to chat today. And in your information section, you say that you teach it that addiction is highly predictable and can be outsmarted. I'll be honest with you, Amber, I have never heard that before. And so I want you to tell me more about the idea that addiction is predictable. I don't think I've heard that, and I've been a social worker for quite a while now. I will be honest, I have not worked with addiction. I have worked with people who have been addicted, of course, but have not worked in addiction recovery. And so I'm very curious about that idea alone and how we can outsmart it.
Right. So like if you've ever sat in any kind of recovery group, and you hear a new person come in talking, you can literally see that person talking, myself or anybody else that's in recovery, and say, this is what this person's going to do tomorrow, and here's what they're going to say the day after that, and next week, this right here is going to go down. Because there's just a series of steps that people take when they're falling into addiction and when they're coming out, when they're in the recovery process. One of those steps, and this can last for years, is what I call bargaining. And it's this process of coming to terms with the fact that they have a problem. And it looks like, okay, I have a problem, but it's not that bad. Okay, I have a problem, but I can stop on my own. Okay, I'm drinking too much. I just need to drink beer and not liquor. Okay, I'm drinking too much. I just need to drink only on the weekends or special occasions. Okay, I just need to stop going out with those friends. And if I stop going out with those friends, I won't do cocaine anymore. This is bargaining. And it's, how do I keep this in my life and not let it go completely, but make it better? Trying to, in recovery, what they call manage it. They're trying to manage it. And it doesn't work. However, if you understand that that's part of the recovery process, then when the person's doing that, you don't get frustrated or mad. You're like, good. The way I see it is like, all right, because there's no way to skip that, but you can speed it up. And in my mind, it's like a series of check boxes. All right, where are we at? We're on step number 4. We're trying this. And I'm like, let's try it all. Let's get them out the way. And then I'm not frustrated when it doesn't work because I know it's not going to work. This is me sort of walking through this process with someone. And if you can have empathy for it, it like puts it on overdrive and makes them figure it out really fast. Because if you have natural consequences, which I could do like hours on natural consequences. Those are things that happen in the real world that you don't distribute. They're not punishments. They cannot come from you. They have to come from somewhere else. If you have those natural consequences, which will happen on their own if someone's addicted, and you have empathy for the person, that activates the learning center of their brain instead of the defensive emotional center of their brain. And they start to figure it out. And so when people come to me with these bargains, I'm like, well, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know, but everybody's different. Let's figure it out. Tell me about your plan. And I'll say, let's do that. Let's write that down on your treatment plan. I like it. If it doesn't work, it's not a big deal because we got plan A, B, C, D. We're going to figure this out together. And then when it doesn't work, they're not even worried to come back and tell me, like, oh, I did it. I lasted good for 2 weeks. And then this happened. I'm like, oh, man. And then I just have empathy. Like, I feel bad for them because it's painful. When these plans don't work, it's because something bad happened and it's not fun. And if you have empathy with someone, they're like, why do I keep doing this? I always promise myself. And then they start talking to you out loud with all this change talk. And now they're telling me why they want to change, why they need to change. And they're giving me these little glimpses into their motivation that I can use to harvest forward instead of feeling frustrated. Like the family feels like, you always say that and it never works. And I'm so sick of that. And then when they say they're just going to drink on weekends and it's Thursday night and they're going for the beer, you try to stop them. I'm like, good Lord, don't stop them. We're trying to make this thing happen fast. We're trying to make this fail fast. It's a whole different way of looking at it. And it makes things go a lot faster and smoother.
Absolutely. And honestly, I hadn't heard it really discussed in that way, like really kind of leaning into or providing empathy into that level, I guess, of the mess that they're kind of creating, like leaning into it, like, oh, okay, this is what it is. Like you said that this is a plan that you're going with. Let's go with this plan. Okay. Because you're right. It shows the people that I'm in this with you. I will go where you were going. And it really allows, clients to be more open with you when it doesn't go the way that they think it will.
Right. And if you think about it, it's just what therapists do with any issue, right? It's what we do. We walk alongside and we know that helps people figure it out faster. It helps them be honest with you faster, which means they gain insight faster and all of these things. What family members typically want to do is they want to protect the person from all these outside natural consequences. They want to hire the lawyer. They want to pay for an extra semester of school. They want to do all the things, right? But inside the context of the relationship, they're mad at the person and they're resentful and they're critical and they're harping and they're negative. And that creates the exact opposite situation because the family member's usually holding this person's life together, by the skin of their teeth or something. Yeah. So it gives them the impression that their life is fine. Their only problem is you, because you're always negative and mean and controlling and whatever. And we got to reverse that. So my thing is you have to let the natural consequences fall and you be the good guy whenever possible. It's not always possible. Like if this is your husband and you got children, you cannot let your children get in the car if he's drunk driving.
Yeah.
There are limits, there's safety limits. But outside of that, you let those balls drop and you have empathy, and a person will figure it out way faster than they will otherwise.
Interesting. Again, that's a serious mindset shift. Because even the public health way of looking at denial and all of this is to like push against it. It's
Right.
not to kind of go along with it and allow it to develop on its own.
Right.
To like I said, to allow it to develop instead of seeing it as a signal or using it to using it as a communication strategy and not necessarily as a way to help them develop and change.
Right.
So that is the
But
hard part.
If we think about it, though, it makes complete sense to us, just
It
all
does.
naturally as human beings. Like if we think about it like this, it's not even the things I teach are not addiction specific. I just teach them for that, but they're just human specific. They're motivation specific. So, like, if you do something wrong and you're in the wrong, let's say you're late to work for the 10th time or something, right? And you come in and your supervisor chastises you for it. You may know you're in the wrong. You may feel terrible about it, but what's going to happen? You're going to feel resentful. You're going to be like, but you don't understand. And I got kids and there was traffic and blah, 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 blah. And you're going to have all these defensive thoughts. And all day long, you're going to be stewing in that resentment. And what are you going to be thinking about? Not how am I going to solve this problem, but like, I need to get the heck out of here. I hate my boss. I hate this job. That's a natural human reflex. And so we just have to understand and use what we know about psychology and start working with it instead of against it. The hard part is that when you're watching someone make these terrible decisions, you get in fear mode. And because you're in fear mode, you start making all the wrong decisions about how to interact with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was going to be my next piece of this. So many times families, like, what you get to the point where you're like, well, what do I do? Like you're watching them destroy their lives, maybe potentially destroy your own as well. Especially when you are, if you're married or whatever, and you're watching them destroy your life.
Right.
And you feel powerless watching them do these things. And you're kind of waiting for that bottom because then you can do something. So how can families, begin to influence change without relying on that bottom to help them make change?
Well, they'll hit these little bumps, right? And some of them will be bigger than others. They'll hit these, hit the wall and something will happen. Maybe it's just that they drank too much and they just feel like dog crap and they're so sick of going to work feeling like dog crap. It can be small like that. It can be like I got a DUI. It can be any number of things. It can be I spent my whole paycheck in the weekend and now how am I going to pay my bills? It can be any of those things. And they have these little moments where they're kind of mad at themselves. And if you can just use, like what counselors do, just use reflective listening, just use mirroring, just use an empathetic statement. What's happening is you're taking someone in that moment or in where they're having that change talk and you're getting them to talk more about it, which does the opposite of when you're getting them to have the defense talk. Now we're growing the motivation part. So that's one piece of it. There are some other pieces of it. Like, for example, like let's say this is your husband and you're watching him, drink more and more and more. Your natural inclination is going to be to say something like, you're setting a bad influence for our kids. Our kids are waking up. You're passed out on the couch and it's in the morning. You got like a beer spilled on the floor. What the heck? That's what you're going to want to say to your husband. If you wait and catch your husband in a good parenting moment, like in a good father moment or something, and you say, one of the things I've always loved about you is how you put the family and the kids first. And I know that seems crazy, but if you do that, like several things happen here. Number one, you just got like a lot of what I call credit points. So once you're out of the bad guy role, you start building credit, like your credit score. Like in our invisible intervention, I teach people how to keep score. Like you need at least 700. Like if you're going to buy a house, you need to be in the 700s at least. I'm like, you can't cash nothing until you're 700. So you get a lot of points for a statement like that. But also it reminds this person of who they are. So one of the things we look for is, what does this person value? What do they care about? Do they care about making a lot of money? Great. Do they care about their appearance? Great. Do they care about their reputation? Fabulous. Do they care about being a good parent? What is it? What do they care about? find those values that that person has and comment on them in a positive reinforcement way. And it raises that up in their consciousness of this is who I am and you're right. And you know what they have? They have this thought that immediately when you say that, they think to themselves what they're doing wrong. Like when someone says, "Oh, Sharlee, I love your shirt." You naturally want to be like, "Oh, this thing, I got this at Target on clearance for $5. Oh my gosh." And you just want to downplay it, right? Because immediately when someone comes at us like that, our humility kicks in. And so when you come at your partner, your kid, whoever is like that, they start, well, yeah, but not really, because guess what I'm doing over here? They may not say that to you out loud, but they naturally have that thought. And then when they fall short of living to their value system, they just notice, because now you've brought it right up here to the front of the consciousness. See, these are all these little things you can do to expedite this process. The problem is that everything I teach people to do goes, I'm like, whatever your gut tells you to do, what I'm telling you to do is opposite of that.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what to do, think about what you want to do, and what would be the opposite of that? Do that.
That's so right, because we want to point out the negative or the things that we want people to change. For whatever reason, it's just easier for us to do that. And so for that partner or parent that might be listening, who is kind of terrified to start that confrontation, or for the things that they say to be viewed in a negative way, maybe if they don't know how to give that positive reinforcement, maybe it's been a long time since they've been able to point out something positive to their partner, to their child. What is a practical way to start a positive conversation with their family member?
Well, sometimes it is hard because sometimes they haven't done anything good in a while, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's real.
And
Yeah.
I say, I don't care what you have to do. If you got to make it, if you got to take something this big, you got to make it this big, whatever it is, it's a seed, and I want you to put some water on it because we're growing it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't care. Find something. But a good way to do that is like let's say this is not your husband, but like your wife, and she's cooking dinner, right? Now, there's sort of levels of positive reinforcement. You can say, "Oh, dinner was great. Thanks, babe." That's wonderful. Who doesn't want to hear that, right? That's points right there. But you could say, because let's say this wife cooks for the family every night, right? And she makes sure everybody has their favorite thing or whatever. Everybody's happy, right? What does that say about what this person values, right? It says something strong. If you can speak to that value in that person, man, you just sledgehammered the right button, right? Because you can say, you are always so considerate. You always put your family first. You always make sure we all have exactly what we need, and you put so much time and energy into it. I don't know what we do without you. Oh my goodness. Think about what happens in that person. Think about what happened to you if you heard something like that, right? Because it feels like you're being seen on like a deeper level.
Yeah.
And it makes this person, first of all, it makes this person respond nice to you, which makes being nice to them a whole lot easier. So immediately when you start using my techniques, they're not going to stop using immediately, but they'll like really quickly change how they're interacting with you. Very, like almost immediately. And now it becomes easier, right? Now we got some of them in the right way. And you're reminding this person of who they really are in their core, instead of trying to tell them how they're screwing up and how they're messing up and how they're the worst. And it just doesn't work with people, right? It just makes them defensive, or it just makes them want to get away from you. Or the worst possible case is they could totally believe you. And then they're like, I am the worst human being. And that's the worst place you want to get someone, because then they just give up. Like you don't want to get a person to believe in all that, because they won't even try anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So just as we discussed, I know you work with both parents, spouses, family members.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are different ways and different approaches that you use with each group, and you discuss leverage points. First of all, let's talk about what leverage points are, and how do you work with each group differently with those leverage points, and how does your approach differ when trying to navigate, with each different group?
Well, I'm going to overgeneralize here, because when we're thinking about big groups, we have to do that a little bit. But
Yeah.
when we deal with like spouses, partners, they're furious, rightfully so. They're like, I did not sign up for this crap. What the heck? They're mad, and they're mad for good reason. When we deal with parents, the parents are desperate and scared for good reasons. Like This is scary stuff. This is real world stuff that ends badly, like legitimately. And so you understanding what state of mind the person that you're dealing with is in, the family members coming from, is really important. And then as far as leveraging goes, I'm not a big fan of ultimatums. Like, if you don't go to treatment, you can't live here, whatever. If you don't stop drinking, I'm going to divorce you, whatever. Those usually blow up in your face, because usually when you're given an ultimatum, you've been in the bad guy role for a long time. And especially with a partner, they secretly wish you would leave, because then they could drink like they want to drink, smoke like they want to smoke, do what they want to do. So when you're saying, I'm going to leave you, they may or may not say it to you out loud, but they're like, thank God.
Right.
So it doesn't work. So you can leverage someone like that, but it's just as likely to blow up in your face, maybe more likely to blow up in your face than it is to produce a good result for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you do have to draw a line. Sometimes you do have to put someone out of your house. Sometimes you do have to divorce someone. I'm not against that at all. I'm just saying, as far as trying to think that if I'm going to throw this big leverage ultimatum point out there, that you're going to now wake up call and get it. That's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it would be reasons for you, not really reasons about them. So I'm not the biggest fan of like leveraging that kind of thing necessarily, unless you really mean it. I'm like, you cannot bluff this. If you're going to throw it out there, you got to like really be in your heart, like knowing that you're going to have to do this and be fully ready. And with parents, especially, they're usually not really ready to like really hold the line. It's usually a bluff. So don't bluff whatever you do, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also not a fan of like these big like home contract rules. Like sometimes when people leave treatment, they'll have a person like do this whole big home contract with their family. Family members get crazy. They write this down. They get a freaking notary. They got like spreadsheets. They get like ridiculous about this stuff. And I'm like, all you do with that is back yourself into a corner. Because if you think because an addict agreed to do something and put their name on something that's going to stop them, you have deluded yourself. Now, what they will do is they'll hold your butt to the line to the T, right? Like if you say, if you fail one drug test, whatever's going to happen. This person could be high in front of you every day and you know it, but they're still passing these drug tests because there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah.
And you know good and well they're totally messed up all the time. But now they haven't failed a drug screen because now you've done put it in the home contract. They were like, I didn't fail no drug screen. You can't prove it. So they'll hold you to the line, but it's not going to hold them to the line. So you got to be really careful about like leveraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get yourself in a lot of trouble with that. And like you mentioned, you have to be very careful when you're leveraging things.
Yeah, you got to like really mean it. And you got to be doing it from a place of not, I'm doing this because I think it's going to make them change, but like, I'm doing this because I can't have this in my house. I cannot live like this. Yeah. I'm done. Like, that's a real good reason to do it. Right. I'm totally fine with that.
Right. And the reason needs to be for you.
Using it as a threat, as an ultimatum, as a bluff. It just blows up on you when you do that.
Absolutely. Okay. So I know that in addiction recovery, it is not just I have gone to treatment, I am recovered, I am no longer an addict. That is not really what happens, right? I know that there is not a straight line, that there is no, once sober, you're going to be sober forever. There is going to be, some level of, I guess not for every person, but there is going to be some, some slipping, some, some setbacks there. So And oftentimes during that, there becomes some bargaining, which we've talked about before, promising some new limits, kind of back and forth there. How do family members kind of stay grounded through that process and through relapse, especially if they've seen some progress and seen their family members do well for a period of time, whether long or short, and they want to see it come back, or they've become used to, their family member being sober? Like, how do they stay grounded through all of that?
That's such a good question, because there's sort of two pieces to it, and you're asking the right piece. How does the family member stay grounded, right? How do I stay emotionally in control? do these techniques that Amber's about to tell me to do. I know she's going to make me do something, right? And so if you'll keep yourself calm, and one of the ways to do that is to sort of assess what this relapse means. Like, sometimes not even a relapse, sometimes just a bargain. Like, there's what I call treatment episode number 1, which is you go to treatment or counseling or whatever, and then you learn all about addiction, and you learn all about the brain, and you learn everything that's going to happen, and you think, yeah, that's interesting, but that's not really me. And so then you go and you learn it all, and you maybe stay sober for a little while, and then you go back to it because you're different. And then you prove all those things you learn in rehab true, right? That's round number 1, and that happens to everyone. So it could just be someone still in the bargaining phases like that. If we're still in the bargaining phases and you understand that this is really just round number 1, this is just part of my bargaining process. Because a lot of people go to treatment and they get sober for periods of time. In their mind, they're resetting. Like, it's like dry January. It's like, I'm going to take this break and I'm going to reset. And then when I go back to it, I won't be all crazy with it. I'll just normally, that's what they're thinking in their mind. So if you understand that, then you're ready for that, right? You're like, all right, let's do this. And you sit there and you hope when it goes, let's hope it goes quick. Because the last thing you want is for someone in that phase to like relapse a little bit and then nothing bad happens. And then it just keeps going. And now we're all the way back to denial. Like, when they relapse, I want everything they learned in treatment, I want it to happen, like, come true right there within a week. And then they're like, oh my gosh, guess that. So you want it to roll fast. That's when they're in bargaining. If it's truly more of like what I would call a relapse, like a person has really been doing well, like they get it, they're really trying to stay sober, and they have some time under their belt and they fall back, then I go into what I call damage control mode. So what you want to do then, because your instinct is going to want to be to freak out. You got to go back to treatment. But, you're just like panicking, right? Don't do that. You want to minimize it. You don't want to maximize it. I know you want to maximize it, but don't maximize it. Because the way I deal with that, because what happens is if this person's really been trying and then they have a lapse, then they're like, I've screwed it up, I've ruined it. And that very quickly leads to the F-its. I'm already in the doghouse, I've already messed up. I guess I'm never going to be able to beat this thing. And then it just rolls. So the way I deal with that, I'm like, dude, this is a blip. This is such a blip. Like, let's analyze it. We're going to figure out what happened. No wonder that happened. We let this crack get in the armor. It's all right. We're cool. We got it. And I don't even tell people like what everyone else tells them. It's like, you got to go pick up a white chip. You got to start all over. I'm like, dude, if this has been going on a day or two and we had 6 months, I'm like, oh, we aren't starting over. Are you crazy? No, we're not starting over, right? If you had 6 months, and 180 days or whatever it is, I'm not going to give you yesterday and the day before that because you used. But if you sober today, then we're going to have 161 days, right? So I damage control it that way because it makes people feel like, okay, like I messed up. We're going to analyze this. So it's not the end of the world. And I'm like, oh, we're getting right back on. This is a blip. So instead of maximizing it, I'm like, no, we're not going to make treatment. This is 2 days. No, you've not lost everything you had. We're right back on track here. So I teach family members to do that. And the person is much more likely to be able to pull it back together when you do that. If you go back to that old bad guy role and you're freaking out and you're threatening them with everything and all the stuff, it's probably just going to keep going and going and going. And you're going to end up right all the way back at the beginning.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I mean, and again, I wouldn't have thought about it like that, but it makes complete sense because again, in my head, I'm like, go do this, get it right. What is wrong with you? But it makes complete sense. You make a big deal of it. And then oh no, instead of, okay, this is not a big deal. Let's just get back on the train. Like we could do this. I mean, it makes complete sense.
Right. Because the person is thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to get this. I'm like, dude, you kidding me? You've been sober for 6 months. You've used 1 day out of 6 months. You're totally getting it. You what do you mean? You have it. Yeah. And so it's just a reframe of helping that person look at it and they're like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, there's nothing different about being sober tomorrow as there was the day before. There's nothing different. There's nothing magical about that. And it makes it feel more doable, which is sort of one of the things that we teach is stop making it more scary, make it less scary. If it's less scary, we can look at it because it's not scary to look at. And if it's less scary, we're willing to try it.
Right.
Don't make it more intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay. We kind of touched on this in the very beginning, but I want to dig a little deeper into it, into the people that have addictions, but see themselves as high functioning, still going to work, still, cooking for the family, still
Mhm.
doing all the things that they need to do.
Resident PTA, whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Doing all
Yeah.
of the things, at the
Yeah.
soccer game, but maybe there's wine in the cup, or,
Oh, yeah.
going to work every day, but maybe,
Mhm.
smoking on the way, all of
Mhm.
the things, like doing everything they need to do, but then the addiction is still there.
Right.
How do we help people, the functional people, see the need for recovery before that situation becomes extreme?
Right. I love talking about this particular population because these days I deal a lot with this population. Like a lot of
Mhm.
the people I see, they're not just functioning, like they're really successful. Like
Right.
I
Like
see a
doing
lot of
great.
business
Yeah.
owners, doctors, lawyers.
Hmm.
I mean, these people are smarter and more functional and successful than I am. Like, dang. So trying to say you're a drug addict, you're an alcoholic,
Hmm.
that's just not going to register. It
Right.
really is more about all these little steps that I've been teaching you, finding their values and pulling them forward.
Mm.
And so when I'm talking to someone, I'm listening for their strengths, something that I call your genius, which is sort of where your natural talents and gifts and skills meet your passion. That's your genius. Like, and it's just specific to you. And I'm listening for it and I'm collecting evidence. Like I'm listening to the stories they tell me. I'm literally keeping these little notes in my head. I'm going to bring it back up and I'm going to start using that as a way to help them. Two things. One, it's going to help motivate them to come back to who they really are. And two, when they start working on recovery and it gets tough, I'm going to say, dude, you done harder stuff than this before. Remember that time? And then I'm going to give the piece of evidence. Remember that time you did this? Remember when you told me about that? And then they're going to believe you because it's real examples from their life, not just like cheerleadery, like, oh, you can do it. It's like, no, I know you can do it because, and then I literally like name it off, all these things. They're like, yeah. So listen for their strengths. Play into what works for them instead of fighting against.
Wow, nice. Before we close up today, I want to toot your horn a little bit. So you moved from private practice in South Carolina to reaching hundreds of thousands online with your YouTube channel. What does that success of your digital community tell us about the current gaps in public health to access for addiction?
I know, right? The crazy thing is, for my whole career, I see the person that has addiction. So I work directly with the person that has addiction, but most of my online content is teaching family members, trying to
Mhm.
help them understand the person who has addiction. What do you say? How do you say it? And like my online content, it's very strategic, as you can see today, Sharlee. Like I feel like when family members, first of all, they're the ones looking for help. The addicts are not looking
Yeah,
for help. The
yeah.
family members are desperate, like somebody, please, God help me. And when they go to like treatment centers, doctors, counselors, like family members, Al-Anon, they get told some version of, well, you're just going to have to back up, take care of yourself,
Mhm.
and maybe they'll hit a bottom and maybe they'll decide they want recovery for themselves. And when this is like your kid or your partner or your sister or something, like that's just
That's
not
horrible.
acceptable,
Yeah.
right? And so the YouTube channel is all about helping people have real strategy. Instead of telling them that they're powerless, say you're powerful and this is how I want you to do it. I want you to say these exact things in this tone on this day. And
Mhm.
it's like, because when you're in crisis, you want to know, like, what do I do? You don't need more of how do you feel? We know how you feel.
Yeah.
Horrible, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what do I do? And that's what the YouTube channel is all about. And I think that's why people take to it so much because they're not getting a lot of messages like that.
Right. Right.
They're not
And as
they're not
I
being
I
told that
listen.
anywhere.
No, they're definitely not. And as I listened to just a few little snippets of it, I'm not sure what I expected to hear. But as I listened to it, I got the same message just as what you just told me. I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute. She's not talking to the addict. She's talking to the family member. She's talking to the people who are seeking the help to try to help their family. This isn't to the people who actually are in need of the treatment. So this is a different way to look at
Right.
getting help for their family. And I was like, huh. So she's
Yeah.
tapping into something that nobody else is doing. This is an untapped market, so to speak, because
Mhm.
there aren't very many things that are saying, I hear what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from as a family member. This is what you say.
Right. There's really
Yeah.
just not. Now I do have content on there. Probably 20-30% of my content is specifically for the person who has addiction, but the majority of it's for the family members because there's nothing for them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and I will say this because I usually start with this, because this is important. What I teach family members isn't fair. Okay. When you're the family member and you're listening to me talk, first thing you're going to think is, what? You want me to be nicer to them? And you're going to be mad about it because it's not fair. Because this person has treated you crappy. You've been handling all their responsibilities for a long time. They've gaslit you. They've done all these things. And you're going to think it's not fair. I'll tell you, you're right. Everything I teach you is 100% not fair. And I'm asking you once again to be the bigger person, say the nice thing, and do it this way when you don't deserve to have to do that. And they probably don't deserve that treatment from you. So what I say, it's not about what's fair. It's about what works. So, and not everyone needs to stay and do this. Some people just need to they do need to cut ties and take care of themselves. But if you want to stay and you want to fix, this is how you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So as we get to start to wrap up today, for those who are ready to put the shovel down, as you say, and start to rebuild the relationships, where's the best place for them to find the tools and to join your community?
Sure. Well, I think YouTube is the best place. I mean, we have a website, we have all the, social medias, but YouTube is the best place. There's thousands of videos there, no matter which side of this issue you're on. There's every angle. We look at it from every single angle, and there's something there for you, and it's totally free. So go there first. If you're ready for more than that, we have online courses. We do a thing every couple of months called Denial Breakthrough Challenges, which is for spouses of functional alcoholics. We have a lot of resources, but the place to start is YouTube. It's free. You're going to wrap your head around it. You're going to get almost all the way there just from YouTube.
Thanks. Okay. Well, Amber, I really appreciate you speaking with us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. You can follow us on our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and more at Behavioral Health Today. And if you like our show, make sure to give us 5 stars and leave us a review. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.